welcome back to my garden. This is the week 2 garden tour for summer 2020. Technically, it's been a little over 2 weeks since the majority of the plants have been in the ground, but this is week 2 of our video, so I am excited to show you all the growth over the past week. I have had a lot of firsts this week in the garden, first blooms, first harvest, so it was a great week. Also dealing with some challenges, which I'll talk about as I go through the tour. So as you can see, when we enter the garden, there are still a few things that need to be transplanted. Some of these things, honestly, I had them either in the greenhouse or up on my deck, and they had started to die off, but I gave them some love, the feverfew, the yarrow, and it has bounced back beautifully. So I really need to get that stuff in the ground, but I am showing myself some grace in not stressing out about getting everything in a certain amount of time, even though I know I should, but you know, there are only so many hours in a day, so definitely need to get this stuff in the ground and or gift it to whoever it is supposed to go to. There are 2 tomato plants here that again, they they are struggling, but I am going to try to put those in some grow bags to test out to see how they do this year. So we will see how that goes. I did get the 3rd strawberry container set up. I added a borage here, which I read was a great companion plant for strawberries, so I added that there. It has already started blooming, and so I didn't add the 2nd plant. This is a plant I got from a nursery, and it is an Elan strawberry, and the flowers are supposed to be pink, but they're coming out white. So I called them and haven't heard back, just to try to get some additional information. I tried to Google this variety but didn't find a lot of information, so we'll either get it in the ground this week. You can see it's already putting off runners, so I need to make a decision about what I'm gonna do, but I hate to buy something and it's not what I wanted. So the other strawberries, I got them covered so that I can avoid any birds getting to the strawberries, and I was able to harvest my first strawberry this week. And here are 2 more. This one is looking like it is ready to be eaten. So this is actually the only plant that I've harvested from this year thus far. This is the Eversweet strawberry. So some of the other plants are already, they have fruit on them. And again, this is a variety of June bearing and ever bearing. So hopefully I'll be able to get strawberries throughout the season with the combination of these plants. So still haven't gotten that first container planted, but that's okay. Purple potted beans look like they're growing well. I did, as I shared, planted another seed, which is getting bigger. I have my contender bush beans, market more cucumbers. I have noticed that the cucumbers in these containers are growing a little bit slower than the cucumbers that I have on the trellises. So just going to continue keeping an eye. They are growing, so that's fine, but the growth rate is different. So just really paying attention to, again, how things are growing in the garden, where they're growing this season. I did add cages this week to the squashes in this front row because, as you can see, the leaves are getting so big. Just for comparison, they are bigger than my hand, so I will be keeping the leaves up out of the walkway and from leaning over the side of the container with the cages. I also did stake the borage because it was leaning over, and they have just done beautifully now that they are staked up. I also this week added these 8-foot stakes for the tomatoes all throughout the garden. It's a little hard to see, but so they are in all of the beds with the tomatoes, and I have been pruning the suckers. I was almost in tears at the beginning of this week because one evening it was dusk, so it was probably darker than I thought it was, and I feel like I may have pruned the main stem of this tomato and all of the suckers, so I am hoping that it continues to grow. I'm honestly not sure. For some reason with these Brandywine tomatoes, and it's only been the Brandywines, and it's probably because I wasn't pruning them originally, but you see the main stem there, and then it splits off. So I snipped it off here, which again, if this was the main stem, I took it off, but you can see it has flowers, and I'm kind of watching it with this line on the fence, and it looks like it is growing. There are some new suckers growing, so I'm gonna just let those suckers grow off and hopefully become a new main stem. But this is my first year intentionally pruning tomatoes just so that they are not getting out of control. So we'll see how they do. Again, I'm giving myself grace. I'm still learning, and I'm not going to beat myself up. The basil looks absolutely beautiful. I harvested basil this week and will be making some pesto today. So super excited about that. This is the Amish paste tomato, still looking good. Again, all of the suckers have been pruned from the stem, with the exception of those that have grown this week. More squash, borage. This is a Roma tomato, which I believe I have 2 of these. I have another one planted in one of the raised beds, so she looks really healthy. The tomatoes in the containers haven't had too many visitors from aphids. I've had more aphids in the containers, and I'll hopefully be able to show some of that, but I have been spraying all of the tomatoes with neem oil, which seems to be helping in most cases, but again, there's that one tomato plant that just can't catch a break. More borage, golden bush zucchini, and I've never grown this variety before. This is a scallop. Oh no, this is golden squash. But I find it interesting, and I don't know the reason why, that there are so many smaller leaves compared to this zucchini that has less leaves, but they are significantly larger. So gonna do some research about that. I'm curious as to why that is, but again, she's growing. She looks healthy. If you were following along or checked out my stories yesterday, I had shown that there were some aphids and ants on this lima bean plant. I gave it a good dusting of DE, diatomaceous earth, and I do not see any ants, but there are still some aphids on here. Some of them look like they're alive, some of them look like they're not. So whatever's left, I'm gonna come through and just squash those off and keep it moving. But other than that, they look healthy. They have grown significantly in the last week. They have the little buds that they're forming, which will turn into lima beans, so that's really exciting. This Boston pickling cucumber has decided to latch on to the fence, and that's okay with me. Last year I did have a few plants that used the fence as a trellis, which I guess is another great thing about this fence. I am probably going to try to keep it trained to the trellis as much as possible, and then once it gets taller, if it decides it wants to latch onto the fence, which again, the tendrils latch on. I wish I could catch this on video, but they latch on and catch a hold of something so quickly, and their grip is tight. So I'm always intrigued by that. So I'm gonna get this back up on the trellis, and then again, probably eventually just let it do whatever it wants. The sweet potato vines have grown. You can see how full it is compared to last week. So those are looking pretty healthy as well. And my raspberry bush, which, as I've shared, I haven't been giving any love to over the last year, but she decided to show me some love anyway. I did do some additional research, which I found out that the type of raspberry bush that it is, and honestly I can't remember right now, but the fruit sets on the old canes. So I'm happy I didn't come through and cut them off like I was planning to. But so all of the canes from last year have the fruit, and they taste so good every time. And I've been able to harvest like every other day. I come and just grab a handful, and so today I'll come through later and grab a handful off. But I am just still amazed at the fact that I grew raspberries. I can't get over it, and my heart is full of so much joy every time I snack on them. So need to figure out again what I will need to do to help this raspberry bush to grow and be healthy throughout the season and for next year. And so based on my research, again, I'm assuming that these new canes, which you can see there's no fruit on the new canes, and so next year these canes will have the fruit on them. So that's what I've found out thus far. Again, really pleased and happy to have been able to harvest, especially because I didn't know what I was doing. And so sometimes, especially when you're growing new things, my motto is just to try it out, you know. And I'm a researcher, and I'll research and read until I can't research and read anymore. But sometimes I just say, try it, see what happens, and learn along the way. Like, don't let not knowing everything about a plant or how it grows or what it needs, don't let that stop you, but just learn along the way, and again, show yourself grace. So a lot of growth in the raised beds this week. a couple of weeks ago now, probably, my tatsui mustard greens bolted because we had warm days and then we had a late frost. But as you can see, there are seed pods on this tatsui, and so I'm gonna just let it hang out here in the corner. I'm gonna try to get some seeds from it. Again, I'm no seed saving guru, but again, I'm gonna try, see what happens. Still haven't gotten this corn transplanted, but I am pretty confident that once I get it in the ground, it will flourish, especially if it rains. But I don't have space for it inside the fence. So I'm thinking about just putting it outside the fence, but I need to figure out what the best place for that is, because there are deer and rabbits and everything, so I have to figure out a clever way to do that. This is the early straight neck squash, which hasn't had significant growth since last week. It has grown. I'm not really surprised because, again, it took a while for the seed to actually germinate. So I'm not surprised that it hasn't grown tremendously, but it is growing, and it will stay there. I also haven't taken out that second round zucchini, which I'm gonna do that by tomorrow to make sure that the one that's staying has enough space and to grow. Here are the potatoes, which I did add some more dirt this week. So filled it up with soil another little bit, and they seem to still be growing healthy and happy. Mint, of course, always flourishing. Spinach has, I think all of it has bolted at this point and is going to seed. So again, letting those hang out. There's some weeds in here that I need to get out as well. But the Wapsipnicon tomato is growing tucked in there. So again, going to let that hang out. It will stay in this container, but I'm just happy that it's growing despite the spinach towering over it. But I guess it gets enough sun to continue growing. The kohlrabi back here, again, leaf miners. This is where I've had the most leaf miner damage this year, which I've never had leaf miners at, or at least maybe I didn't know what it was, which is quite possible. But now that I do, I'm seeing it all over, and obviously something else has gotten to this leaf. I haven't been able to find the culprit on either of the areas where the kohlrabi is. I cannot find anything that is eating the leaf, but obviously something is, so hopefully eventually I'll find it. This corn has gotten huge in a short amount of time, so I'm gonna stake it up some to give it some additional support as it continues growing. I've never grown corn in a container, and so and last year I didn't have success growing corn at all, but it looks really healthy, so that's good to see. Golden cow pepper. I moved the arugula over here. I moved some things around this week, so the arugula's over here. I've been harvesting from the arugula every couple of days, throwing it in salads. Yesterday I had a kale and arugula salad, which was absolutely delicious. So we'll continue harvesting from that. The melons have grown. I just love melon leaves. I think that they are so cute, and they are growing nicely. Squash, the ground cherries have flowers. When I first purchased the plants and got them in the ground, I was plucking. Oh, look! Look! Oh my gosh! I haven't even been looking close enough. Do you guys see the pods? So once it's ready, it will fall off on the ground and I will be able to enjoy it. And again, this is my first year growing ground cherries, which I guess is why I'm so excited. Well, I'm always excited. It doesn't matter if I've grown it or not grown it, but I didn't even notice all of those. Oh, there's another one. Oh gosh. So soon and very soon, I will be enjoying some ground cherries. That was exciting. In this bed, I had a couple of firsts this week. This is my first cosmos bloom in the garden ever. One of my goals this year was to grow flowers, attract more pollinators. And so this is actually the first bloom in the garden. She is so beautiful, and you can see all of the other buds that are getting ready to bloom. I have cosmos all over, but this is the first one that has bloomed thus far, which is exciting to see. They're so beautiful. They do add, I'm really excited to see in the next few weeks, once everything is a little bigger, how much beauty the flowers add to what's already a beautiful space. I also harvested a couple of carrots this week, so I just was being impatient and pulled one out here or there, and they were good. So I've also been sharing the growth of my calendula, which I'm surprised, but this is my first time growing them, so I'm not sure if this is normal or not normal. I'm surprised that it hasn't opened up yet. I don't know how long that process takes. I came out here a couple of days ago, and the inside the flower bloom was full of little bugs. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it not blooming yet, but it's still there, and I'll leave it and let it do what it wants to do. These midget melons are growing tremendously compared to the sugar baby and sugar cube on the other side. I also direct sowed a passion melon, which hasn't germinated, so I'm thinking at this point that it might not, but again, history should tell me that because it hasn't germinated thus far doesn't mean that it won't. So definitely will be leaving that there, but I also might start some seeds under the grow light inside. Everything in this bed, a variety of peppers, are looking pretty good. Need to deadhead the marigolds so that they will continue blooming, which is just pinching off the heads that are dead so that the plant will continue to get new flowers. Another cosmos. And so this is the bed that had my Rosa Bianca eggplant that was so tiny and was infested with flea beetles. The diatomaceous earth did not work. It was already too far gone. They had just decimated the leaves. So I replaced it with a zinnia, and this is my first year growing zinnias. Also, I have been really struggling to even get the seeds to germinate. Tam in the Garden sent me some seeds, And I got some seeds actually from the Dollar Tree as well. And so I did get seeds to germinate eventually. I'm really excited to see how they grow. Everyone says that they're their favorite flower in the garden, so I really can't wait to see what they look like. I'm glad I added them into the beds. I don't know. I know they grow pretty big, so I'm not sure if they'll be able to stay here or not, but we'll see. Again, learning throughout the process. This is a pineapple tomato, which is looking really healthy. Surrounded by peppers, another zinnia tucked in the corner there. This black beauty squash, I actually planted this squash, started the seed the same day that I started this yellow crookneck, the same day that I started that early straight neck. And you can see how big this plant is compared to the other two, which again have germinated, but their rate of growth has been much slower, which is interesting. They all came from the same seed source, so I'm not sure again what that means. I also, I know that ants live outside, obviously, but I have never seen so many ants in the garden, and I'm trying to figure out what is different this year. I honestly think there's been some kind of shift in the atmosphere, because there have been flies, salamanders, snakes, which again, obviously all these things live out here. I'm in their territory, but I have not seen so many spiders, different kinds of spiders. Just, it seems that this year there are a lot and a lot sooner. So I don't know what that's about, but I need to figure out the ant situation and how to keep those under control. I added these little deck planters and 2 grow bags because I accidentally on purpose bought 2 tomato plants. So the goal this year was to grow majority of my garden from seed, which I am pretty happy, I am extremely happy and proud of myself, because most of what you see out here, all of the tomatoes with the exception of these 2, all of the peppers have been grown from seed. The squash has been grown from seed. But there were 2 varieties of tomatoes that a garden friend had given me from her harvest last year. The first one was this sun sugar, and the second one was the Mr. Stripey heirloom tomato. This tomato was so delicious that I had to have it. And I have been checking Lowe's and Home Depot and couldn't find it. I couldn't find it anywhere. But last weekend when I went to Lowe's, they actually had them. So I guess they were still getting shipments of plants given everything that's going on. And as soon, I literally was dancing in the aisle outside, and so I had to have those. So those are the only 2 tomato plants this year that I did not start from seed, but I'm okay with that because again, I like them, I enjoy them, and they make me happy. So here they are, the accidental on purpose tomato plants that were purchased. I'm giving them a try in these grow bags that I made because again, I don't really have, I could have found some place to tuck them in one of the other beds, but I didn't want to do that based on how I had everything set up thus far, and also wanted to give the grow bags a try to see how those work. So I also again got these deck planters, which I'm gonna just put some flowers in. The nursery down the street from my house gave these to me for free, guys. Free. I didn't pay anything for these 6 containers, so I am happy for this free additional space. They're the containers that go on your deck rails, but again, enough soil and space to grow in. So these are the 2 branches that I snipped off of the Brandywine tomatoes, which again I shared. I wasn't sure if they were the main stem or not. I stuck them in some dirt. You can see they look pretty sad, but some of the leaves actually do look like they are coming back or hanging on. So I'm gonna just leave them here in this dirt to see how they do. Last week I also mentioned that I purchased an eggplant, and I did get it transplanted this week, and as soon as I transplanted it, the flea beetles made their way over here to this eggplant and really started doing some damage again in a matter of 24 hours. But since I sprinkled it with a heavy sprinkle of DE, I have not seen any, so we'll definitely need to stay on top of that this season, because again, last year no eggplants because of the flea beetle. So I really want to stay on top of making sure that this plant is taken care of and healthy and flea beetle free so that I can harvest from it. The kale still hanging on, still being able to harvest from this kale plant. My daughter comes out here now in the mornings and grabs a few leaves for her smoothies, so I'm really just gonna leave it here. If you can see, there is more space that I could plant some other things in this bed, but because I'm still harvesting from this kale, I'm gonna leave it. One of the other plants again has seed pods on it now, so this is an absolute favorite of mine. So I definitely want to try to be patient to see if I can get some seeds from it, because, and then again, this has been planted since last August and it is still here feeding my family. So she's gonna stay till she's ready to go. So most everything looks good in this bed. Oh, look, another little tomato. That's a Wapsipnicon tomato also. I guess I need to find someone to give it to. Beans, more squash. This is the other kohlrabi, which again, look at this. Is it a slug? I thought I saw some poop, but I cannot find a worm. I just don't know. I looked down in the hay, so I don't know what it is. Maybe someone recognizes this kind of damage. I don't know if it's a little critter. I just don't know. But they're here with their white powder all over them. The holy basil is getting its flower, which today was the first day I saw this also when I walked around when I first came out here. So that's exciting to see. The tea garden, the lemongrass, everything looks good in that bed. I'm gonna harvest some of this chocolate mint today or tomorrow. I got a dehydrator for my birthday, which I cannot wait to start using. And I also picked up the cutest mason jars from Target yesterday that I'm going to put some of my dried herbs in as I harvest and dry them in the dehydrator. So here we are for week 2. Again, a lot of firsts in the garden this week. First harvest of raspberries, first borage blooms, first strawberries, first cosmos bloom, first pea. Also, I didn't talk about, but I did harvest from the peas. So it's been a great gardening week. I do have some things to address and pay attention to with the aphids and the ants. Also monitoring and checking the growth of my tomatoes that I pruned. Again, prayerfully it was not the main stem and they will keep growing. And this is where we are. So thanks for coming along with me on this tour. So happy to share with you all the growth of the garden, and we will see you next week for week 3 to see how everything is growing.